It is Monday on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here. Patrick Reusse with me as usual. Patrick, we got to get to the golf. You were at a lot of the 3M Open over the weekend. Got to get to the Vikings news that Danielle Hunter has signed at least a 1-year truce, I guess we would call it, because he gets free agency again next year. But Patrick, we got to start with the Twins, losers of 5 in a row. The last 3, a sweep at Kansas City, which is not actively trying to lose, but has been doing a spectacular job of it so far this year. That's a weird way to go towards the trade deadline. They don't play today, then they resume play in St. Louis tomorrow. Patrick, what do you make of getting swept, this 5-game losing streak, but suddenly just a half game up again? It seems like a lot of the goodwill they built up quickly at the start of the post-break schedule has been erased, and maybe even more than that.
Well, after that loss, that inexcusable, pathetic loss Tuesday, I declared on Twitter, at least, this was not your normal loss. This one was going to have effects on it because
Yeah,
you were leading 6-2, and yet you struck out 18 times during this game. You just went up there and flailed away like morons, even though you got some runs early and you had a 6-2 lead. And then the bullpen, for want of a better term, puked it up. And you lost that game. And I said on Twitter, now in a little bit of an exaggeration, I predicted they were going to finish 13-47 in their last 60 games. That they were a tremendously flawed team and that the pitching was returning to being okay instead of the
yes,
starting pitching. It was always going to get, we talked about that at the break, not at the halfway point, at the
correct.
break. Okay. And we talked about that at the break, that the starting pitching was not going to be as good. It was going to be okay. It was going to
Yep.
be adequate, but it wasn't going to be like it was. And the hitting, there was no sign that the hitting was going to get better. Well, there was for about 4 days, but yeah, this is awful. I mean, what's with Duran here?
Yeah.
Duran comes in. He's got a lead against the Royals. The one thing he wants to do is not get in a situation where he has to face Bobby Witt, and they still got him throwing breaking balls and stuff, walking 2 batters to load the bases to bring up the one guy they got that can hit. Then he gets ahead of him, I think 1-2, and then serves him a heater down the middle, and Witt hits it out of the ballpark. So it's it was just an awful, awful weekend, and the worst was yesterday. I mean, this slop balling left-hander, he's the slowest thrower in the league. He's Jamie Moyer.
Yeah.
And they let him dazzle them. They get 1 run, and then you got your phenom utility player who Willie Castro, who gets a hit once in a while, and he does some things, but he is a moron on the bases and having any feel for the game and what he's watching. He gets thrown out Saturday night at third base.
Yeah.
Uh, there's no reason to go to third base, and he gets thrown out by 20 feet, and and they. Rocco's quote, well, why do you play him today? Why don't you get benched? And he basically said, if we start benching everybody who makes a stupid play, we won't have a lineup. So
Right.
it's and then Kirilloff goes on the DL. Still a DL to me. Dang it. The heck with the IL. The DL goes on the DL. And there was a reason I thought that he was striking out really. He was the AL player of the week, but then he also was striking out like crazy. Now they have to put him on the DL, which means unless they make a trade, we still aren't going to get rid of Joey Gallo. It's I mean, it's just been a terribly flawed lineup from the get go. The fact that you had to put Taylor, who's a 210 hitter in the lineup because Buxton couldn't play center field. And then Vasquez, you bring him in, and he's a complete out. There's not really much they did in the offseason to improve the hitting. And then Carlos Correa, we've talked about this before. If this is him, you're not going to be any good. If this is, if he can't hit third and knock in 80, 85 runs, 90 runs, and score some runs, you're not going to be any good. And their lineup's terrible. And now their bullpen's got nobody in it,
Well, yeah.
I mean,
if Duran's not getting it done right now, who do you trust there?
Yeah. They keep using that lefty Moran, and he'll if it's really a big pressure situation, he'll come in and walk two guys immediately. Now they got Thielbar back, and that might help. But I don't know. You almost hope they don't win it, don't you? You almost hope they don't advance. They should be penalized for this. They should be penalized for this. I think we're reaching the 2/3 point in their next game, but
108 would be through 2/3.
Yeah, I think they're just they don't deserve to. I know the Central, blah blah blah, but they haven't played good enough to even be 500, which is they are now. They're just not good. They're not good. They're not smart. They're not really good in the field. When Taylor doesn't play, when they don't have him play in center field, they're not in the field. They're mediocre at best, and then hitting wise, they're horrible. And you got a lousy bullpen. And this is. Everybody wants to be mad at the manager. Somebody said to me, well, they have talent. They don't have that much talent. They aren't that good. They aren't good. You got Joey Gallo for what? Joey Gallo. Joey was talking about his slump the other day to Phil. Well, Joey, this isn't a slump. This is you.
This is you, right?
This is you.
Your life is a slump. Your life at the plate is a slump.
Last year, you struck out 40% of the time. This year, you're striking out 42% of the time. You're a stiff. What are you doing? What are they doing with this guy? What is he here for? What purpose does he serve? Okay, he's fair in outfield and he's fair at first base, but he goes up and strikes out. Anytime you need a hit, he strikes out, and then even once a week he'll hit a home run, and we've hit 2 home runs in 5 days, and people will say that's why he's playing. He should not be here, and it's a joke that he is. That's my view.
It's amazing. What'd you make of it? Did you read Rocco's comments on after Sunday's game? It was interesting. I think a lot of this was trade deadline motivated because that's just a couple days from now. He was asked about it. He said, getting swept, quote, drives some points home for me, but I don't know if it drives any points home for the organization as a whole.
Yes.
There's a different quote too where he said,
but then he has some stupid quote about how he doesn't feel like they need anything.
Yeah, he said it's always a legit question. Always a legit question right before the trade deadline about whether help is on the way. Sometimes there are moves and you always look and have to be open to pretty much everything. But when you look at the big picture, I think we have a very good team. I'm not sitting here begging for anything at all.
Okay, there's a Thielbar quote. I got to look it up right here. This is a Thielbar quote. And this is another thing that's driving me nuts about this collection. Thielbar's quote is, here we go. Excuse me, I'm looking on the paper. But
was that today, or was this a couple days ago? Okay,
today, I think Thielbar, or was it? Yes. Oh, the day. Anyway, it's a quote about. Oh yeah, Thielbar. Blah blah blah. I've been out for a long summer. I've been here out for basically 3 months, so it's been tough to deal with. I want to be out there competing with the guys. They've been having a lot of fun this summer. No, they haven't.
No,
they lying. Haven't. You're a good, wholesome young man from Randolph, Minnesota. I knew your mother. She was a great person. She taught you to tell the truth. Don't lie.
Nobody's been having fun.
Nobody's been having fun. There's no fun going on, and they keep talking about that. And somebody shows up and they say, well, I'm here to win championships. No, you aren't.
No.
You're not. You're not here to do that. You're here to be part of a extremely disappointing team that, when we really look at it, should be considered this disappointing because they're not any good.
Right.
Overall, they're not. They're mediocre in fielding, horrible at hitting, and they got carried by starting pitching for half the season. Now the starting pitching's, I wouldn't say it's returning to the norm, but it's just above average now instead of being really good, and they're not good. They're not
No.
good. They hopefully they'll go 75 and 87 and make some changes.
Yeah.
And so
I got this from our colleague Howard Sinker, who tweeted something and then got this in response. He tweeted something about Buxton and Correa kind of having an opportunity yesterday and not delivering. And Justin Hayes tweeted back at Howard. He sent this to me. Are Buxton and Correa the new Parisi and Suter?
Yeah, well, no, because Parisi and Suter was almost your defenseman of the year. Well,
yeah, that's the thing.
Final three. Suter was a hell of a player for you. He might have been a self-motivated jerk in the locker room, but he was not they were not a disappointment. They saved the franchise, for God's sakes. 2000, when that July 4th that they signed him, they were losing 30% of their ticket holders. The place was starting to lose. For the first time, the honeymoon was over, and you signed those two guys, and they had like 200 straight sellouts. So people who complain about Suter and Parisi are idiots. And also, they were very good players. You knew when you signed them to that long contract that, that at the end they weren't going to be as good as they were. But Suter and Parisi, that was a happy era for this franchise.
Those guys did have some fun at some point.
They did at some point at one time, but they didn't get out. They got out of the first. They even got out of the first round twice, which hasn't been done. So I can't say that about Kaprizov. He hasn't been out of the first round.
That's true.
He got out of the first round a couple of times. No, that's not. Tell Jason Hayes he's wrong.
Justin Hayes, I think maybe the spirit of it I can get a little bit, just the disappointment, the big contracts. I like you're right. Those guys, for when they were here, especially the first 5 or 6 years, those guys were really good players. You understood why they did what they did. There was disappointment that they didn't get further, but you're right. They won a couple playoff series. That was maybe about as far as or as good as those teams were. But yeah, Buxton and Correa obviously acquired differently too. Buxton's been here from the get-go. Correa was the free agent, but maybe just the wanting more from your high-priced players, especially when it matters most. I mean, man, they got to get more from both of those guys. It's just like you can't a mid-market. We're not calling them small market. A mid-market team like the Twins can't have however much they're paying those guys combined, like 45, 50 million. And Buxton's only a third of what for a third of that total. Correa makes up the vast majority of it, but you can't have players like that not produce. It just doesn't work.
We talked about it last week. How the unexplainable thing here is Buxton against left-handed pitching.
Yes.
Why the heck can't he hit left-handed pitching?
And they're hitting 218 as a team against lefties, like by far the worst in baseball. And you're right, that soft tosser yesterday was the worst of it. Both those guys struck out in a key situation in the late in the game, I think, against a bad reliever. It's just but the lefties, it's just mystifying. How do you? Yeah, they should be pounding those guys, especially the guy yesterday. I know it's hard to get your timing against someone who throws so soft. Yeah. And my favorite, you weren't here for this for me to talk about this last week because this was later in the week. But my favorite last week was that Polanco and Lewis are almost like making a trade when you get those guys back. That's my favorite trade deadline trope when they talk about the injury guys as it's almost like we're making a trade when they come back.
I don't know. something's going to happen at the end of this season. I just don't know what it is. But it would be funny, though, if that Cleveland team wins the division. They're
Yeah.
terrible.
Everybody in this division is awful.
Terrible. They're terrible. The White Sox are,
White
the
Sox surrendered. They're trading everybody.
They tried. They surrendered. I said, well, they should have. But they're, you'd still trade them rosters, for goodness sakes. This is it's an embarrassment. It could if something like this could lead to if they ever get two more teams, maybe we'll get to 8-team divisions sometimes, 8-team divisions, and then not have to put up with this nonsense. They're just so lucky that the crowds have been okay. I think they're going to go in the tank here pretty soon, but their crowds have been okay, and people have shown up on this. The thing is that they're underachieving. Okay, they are underachieving because of Correa and Buxton, but they're not very good. I keep saying that.
They're okay.
Willie Castro is going to have 400 bats.
Yeah.
Every time he gets on base, he'll steal a lot of bases, do a lot of things, and then he'll do something really stupid. And, he's a utility guy that got cut by Detroit, and he's going to get 400 at bats for you, for sakes. Let's be realistic about what they're putting on the field. It's not that good.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, premixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to MGMWineandSpirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
And this time next week we'll be talking about a 5-game winning streak. I mean, this is just a weird team. It's an unserious team. They're like the Timberwolves. They're very much the embodiment of last year's Wolves.
This was 2022-23 Timberwolves this weekend.
Yes.
What terrible team could we lose to?
Yes. Yes, it was. Although I dare say that Timberwolves team had more talent than relative to the league than this year's Twins do, but they're both kind of that maddening hanging around 500. You want more from them, and we'll see where it goes. Hey, Patrick, you were at the golf a lot over the weekend. A wire-to-wire finish. The field, I think they still wish that when this started it was a little bit different, and then kind of got to compete with the British. You got to compete with a lot of other factors in the summer, and the fractioning of golf here didn't help them either. But what did you notice when you were out there this weekend?
Well, they did get a little bit of a hit from the fact that a positive hit from the fact that they lowered the number of players going into the FedEx Cup from 125 to 70.
Yes.
So that's why Justin Thomas was here. Unfortunately, he didn't make the cut. There's about 6 guys that you said, here are guys to look at. About 5 of these guys, Woodland, and 5 of these guys didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
That's what happens. And because you had to, Thomas was 2 under, which should make the cut, but the course was playing so easy. The fact that it rained out there, and the only wind that they got all week was Thursday afternoon. It blew for a while, and that's when Justin Thomas had said it was like playing with a blow dryer on you. But the fact that it rained both Thursday and Friday kept the greens really soft, so they just could do anything they want. And then if that place doesn't have any wind, and you can't get the greens really firm, they're gonna tear it up, and they did. And this Lee Hodges shot 63 on Thursday. He off at 8:30 Thursday morning, so he was done at 1 in the afternoon. He
Before the blow dryer.
He led the rest of the way. Now it actually was down to 3. Not that it was going to make any difference on 18.
Yeah,
and then the other guy makes 7. It's in his group. He makes birdie, made 8. Made triple bogey, and so he ended up winning by 7 strokes. But I would say though the highlight of the tournament was me almost announcing my retirement because
Oh no.
I wrote a random column for Thursday's paper on Aaron Baddeley, the one time Australian phenom who
Yeah.
basically had 18 years of mediocrity.
Oh yeah, I read that. That was good. Yeah, I
And,
enjoyed that.
he ended up finishing. He was on the leaderboard there. He was up to fourth. And one time I said, if he wins, I'm going to retire with the greatest random column of my life. Wins, but
Right.
he ended up tied for seventh, and
That's pretty good.
and won $245,000 or something. So anyway, that was good. Nice guy, but
You can keep your job and feel good about it. It's a
yeah,
win-win.
that's right. That's right. It's one of those columns when you're talking to this guy, and I said, I need another, and then all of a sudden he says, I said, did you bring your family? Because he got 6 kids. And he said, yeah. And he said, they're in Wasika today with my wife's best friend. So his wife.
That's right.
So they ended up being this woman from Wasika and his wife were roommates at Arizona State. They're like inseparable. And I said, there's always a local angle.
There's always a local angle. Yes, there is.
Even if it's for an Australian pro.
Right. Right.
And I was glad to see him do well. But those 6 kids all lined up, followed him all over the golf course. So it was, but they did have good crowds Saturday and Sunday, and the infrastructure out there is huge. And it's become I don't know, man, the weather had a lot to do with it, obviously. But, one thing you got to remember is the seniors, they were giving away free for a while.
Yes.
They're charging $65 to get in here. Now I'm sure there's a lot of hospitality tickets around.
Oh yeah. Right. Yes.
But it's not a free event anymore. But there are a lot of younger, 35-year-old couples who, might be drinking in the North Loop if they weren't there. So there was good, really good galleries Saturday and Sunday. After Friday, nobody showed up because it was 95, and Friday it wasn't very good. But they got the same dates next year, right after the British Open. So it's always going to be a tough sell. So anyway, but it was this guy might be a pretty good player. The guy from the kid from Alabama, but right now it's a bunch of no names battling out at the end, and and I don't think that makes a lot of difference to the very casual golf fans, but the old golf crowd we used to have that always wanted names is. We should be happy they did this, though. The seniors, the champions thing, it completely ran out of gas out there. And the Champions Tour is more boring than it's ever been. When your best player is 67 years old and still winning, it's a bad look. So, and these guys are retiring now. Leaving the regular tour with so much money now that 2/3 of them don't go play the seniors anymore.
That's a good point.
That was a good move. It was a good new move, but it's a tough sell. There's no doubt about it.
We think this tournament's in it for the long haul. I mean, how many? Was this the fifth?
I think
fifth or sixth year of the regular.
I think they signed a 10-year deal with the. Now they could probably get out of it because of all the changes that have been made in the PGA Tour. But even with all the problems they had, I think 3M likes having some good publicity. I don't know how much it costs them, because the difference is when the PGA when you're in the Champions, you got to pay for the TV coverage yourself. There's a lot of costs, but the tour itself helps you a lot financially with these tournaments now. So so it's probably 3M spending more, but not hugely more, even though the purse is incredibly larger now than it was for the Champions.
Interesting.
That's but it's here. It's just it's always going to be you're always going to have to hustle to sell it because it's a bad time for getting players, and it's the middle of summer when still people heading for the lake. So
as long as they got Hollis, they won't mind hustling a little bit.
No, Hollis will be hustling, and he's now got a tournament director who's kind of was more of a public face this time than Hollis was. So
Okay.
I would say they'd call it a success because of the crowds that showed up Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of showing up, Danielle Hunter should be back on the field now with the Vikings. He signed a 1-year contract over the weekend, kind of ending that impasse. Interesting. I mean, it's a big money deal. It's got 17 million. It can be up to 20 million. He was on a deal that's only going to pay him 5, and that was never going to happen. But essentially becomes a free agent again after this season. They got a lot of interesting free agents after this season now, Patrick. Danielle Hunter, Kirk Cousins, their other edge rusher, Marcus Davenport, all those guys only signed through this year. I guess this was the logical, or at least a short-term deal with Hunter to keep him on the field this year, let them compete, was probably the logical outcome, but still a little surprising. It doesn't really tell you what they think of him or what he thinks of them, that all they could get to was a 1-year deal. I did kind of think that it was either going to be something a little bit longer or they're going to have to trade him. The 1 year was kind of maybe a surprise.
And there's nothing about I don't even know if the NFL do we have no trades in the NFL? But what if are they signing him to trade him? I don't know.
That's a good question.
That doesn't make any sense, I guess.
No.
If you feel because teams, you're not going to get a lot more if teams know that with this contract, he's going to be a free agent after this year. So if he has a good year, so I don't know. I guess, I suppose their new defensive coordinator said, I need this guy. I don't have any pass rushers.
Right.
So they're going to do, they look at the Central Division. North, excuse me. Sort of like the Central, but it's in the North.
Yes.
And it's just sitting there, take it, go ahead, take it. This Detroit nonsense is anything. So they got to give the defensive coach a chance to put things together. But as the Reusse theory is, they owe the gods 3 games from last year.
That was good. You mentioned that last week, and it's absolutely true.
If they're at 11, if they're 11 and a 6 team, they're going to be 8 and 9.
Yeah,
because they they won games that they shouldn't have. Plus, this year they have last year they had 7 road games. This year they have 9 road games. So they played the 1 game in London. So so anyway, I don't know. It's I don't know what to think of this team. It's they apparently has the little wide receiver started practicing yet?
Yes, he's been out there. He's been out there, so
trying to mind, as they used to say in Fulton, Minnesota, he's trying to mind his P's and Q's now.
Yes.
What were P's and Q's, by the way? What were they? I'm not even sure what they were.
I'm not sure
where they were, but
they believe in him though. He's got the right infrastructure around him, so we're gonna.
Wow. I got that infrastructure. That's always good. Percy had that infrastructure around him too, and he still did practice on Wednesdays, right? So anyway, but.
Yeah, it's got the potential to be an interesting year. I think I expressed this to it was Chip the other day when he was on, that this year's pretty big for Kwesi. I think we learned last year that whether there was some fortune involved, I don't think any of us would disagree with that. But that O'Connell can coach. I'm not as certain yet that Kwesi can build a roster. And I think this year and kind of into next year and kind of what they do to reshape this team to competitively rebuild this team. This is kind of his, as Ed Donatel would say, this is his time to shine, and I'm curious to see what he's got in that regard, because we don't know a whole lot about what he's done in the draft so far. None of those guys have really played much. This is turning into his roster quickly, and then that's where things heat up a little bit.
It would be interesting to see if those 2 defensive backs that were drafted and didn't play last year, Booth and Sign. Is it Sign? Is that how we pronounce it?
Louis Sign.
Okay. And I'd look at it and say Sign.
Yes.
But if those 2 guys can play, that'll help a lot.
Yeah. They need some help in the secondary.
Now that they're help, that will help a lot. But Viking fever will be upon us shortly, and there's nothing we can do about it. So anyway,
and the Twins have gotten us to Vikings fever, but it's that team. I don't know. They're just
they're not fun.
they're not fun. They're not fun.
The Wolves were very frustrating, but they were kind of fun sometimes. This team hasn't been fun, since they were 10-4. They were fun when they were 10-4. Since then,
and when was the last time this team was fun? Was the Bomba Squad the last time this team was genuinely fun? Because
nobody had any fun in 2020.
Right.
That was no fun.
They were still good, but yeah, that wasn't any fun at all because nobody could go to the games.
No, yeah, they haven't been fun since, that's for sure. So, yeah, I don't know. But this is, just because it's so simple to win this division, and they might not do it.
I know.
76 and 86 isn't going to win the division, and that's where these clowns are headed. So, anyway.
Final.
I anticipate another sweep for the Missouri team in the next 3 days. I don't see the bounce back. I think this is a dead team right now. That I guess I predicted that a couple other times, and they turned around and played okay. So I don't know. They're just not good.
Do you see Sean Payton? I talked about this the other day, but let me finish here. Do you see Sean Payton just absolutely ripping Nathaniel Hackett and just everything that went wrong in Denver last year? Just out of nowhere. And now then he came out a day later and said, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that." And now Aaron Rodgers is ripping Sean Payton. This is just I love just like this rivalry has been born out of like thin air. They just created a rivalry that didn't need to be there out of whole cloth. It's just amazing.
Well, Payton comes back now. He gets bribed to come back to Denver.
Yeah.
He gets all powerful, and he can, he's always shot off his mouth, but a lot of it was down there in New Orleans, with the lesser media and stuff. And this thing, he just goes off.
Yeah.
And, he's crazy. That's for sure.
One of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. I mean, that's where do you ever hear that?
I mean, the NFL has had Abe Gibron, for goodness sake.
And Les Steckel.
Yeah, right. It's humor. I'd love to see that in the NFL too, because they hate it so much.
Oh yeah,
the NFL hates that. I wouldn't be surprised if the NFL attempts to fine him.
Yeah,
that's certainly the fellas in New York are not happy with this becoming the best story so far of training camp.
I think they'll let it go until October 8th though, because that's when these guys play each other.
Oh, that's right. And where is it? In Denver, Green Bay?
I'd have to look that up. But Rodgers' quote over the weekend was pretty good though. He said, "It made me feel bad that someone who has accomplished a lot in the league is that insecure. They have to take another man down to set themselves up for some easy fall if it doesn't go well for that team this year. I think that was way out of line, inappropriate, and I think he needs to keep my coach's name out of his mouth."
Yeah, that's good. Yes, it's great. How about Rodgers taking less money to there? So he definitely wanted out, and
definitely wants to win.
Great for the Packers too. So I mean, it was time. It was time there. But, it's a great story. I love anything that besmirches the NFL. I'm a big fan of them not being able to control the message.
Yes,
completely, which they do. So.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Lynx, Patrick. I thought they were going to go in the tank when Collier got hurt, but they beat the Liberty and the Sun without Nafisa Collier, two of the three best teams in the league. They're now back to 500 after that 0-6 start. That's pretty good.
Yes. Can we dream of winning a playoff game, winning the second playoff game since Maya Moore retired?
That's your favorite stat. It's one of your favorite stats.
Yeah. That's I like to bring that up, but it's certainly not collapsing for Caitlin, which was when I looked at this roster, I said, they're trying to get the number one draft choice.
No, they're not. The playoffs seem like they're
more terrible. Who's terrible? Who's gonna? I mean, they go on a 2-year basis, but who's gonna end up getting the first round draft choice? They have a lottery too, right? Don't they?
Yeah, they have a lottery. There's some bad teams this year. The Lynx are probably gonna.
You know who might be tanking for Caitlin?
Seattle
Sparks.
Yeah, maybe.
The Sparks are terrible.
Yeah, there's some teams that aren't very good this year.
She'd love. I'm sure she'd. She might be a country girl and all that stuff. I mean, a Des Moines girl, but she might be a small place girl. But I think she got an agent telling her she could make a lot more money in L.A. and any other place, ads and stuff. So anyway.
Lynx are all the way up to 6th in the league standings now.
Yeah, that's
13 out of 12 teams, and 8 of them make the playoffs. So it's going to be it's almost less avoidable than it is to win the AL Central, as we're finding.
And you know what's funny though is when they get beat, they still get beat.
Oh yeah,
just get beat by 30 when they get beat.
And it's usually when they don't play defense. And Cheryl Reeve does not like when they don't play defense.
Yes. All right,
sir. Appreciate it. We'll talk again next week.
Yeah. Blue Twins. Piss. Goodbye.